That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
All right, so I know we have not done this in a while, but let's talk about some of these real Dynasty trade offers that I just got done through sending today. And the reason I went through and sent the majority of these trade offers is I was like, okay, so we know at the beginning of the offseason, really up until I want to say at the end of summer, so we're doing this a little early, but everything you need to focus in on for Dynasty is just value, value, value. I mean, literally, team need does not mean anything for me. This is the number one thing we talk about over there on Patreon when someone reaches out to me going, Mason, I really have a hole at running back 2. I need to address it. Should I be selling Stefon Diggs for Joe Mixon? And I'm going, okay, well, let's not focus in on your team need at all. You don't have to start a lineup for another 3 months. Why are you ever going to focus in on your team need? That's what we've been saying up until this point. But knowing how busy I'm going to be close to the fantasy season, just producing content over and over and over again, what we have to do is we have to start optimizing our rosters right now. And how we are doing that is we are going and we are identifying those stacks that we want. So if I have Josh Allen in a league, I'm going to be going trying to get Stefon Diggs. If I have a Mike Evans in a league, I'm going to be going trying to get a Tom Brady, or maybe trying to move a Mike Evans for a player that fits one of my own quarterback builds. And I know we've been focusing in on this so much as of late, but I really want everybody to understand the importance of stacking in fantasy football. Now, I think if you play DFS, or at least if you comprehend DFS to the smallest degree and you are close to a winning player, I'll say I'm not a winning DFS player, at least not yet, but you at least know when you start to play, if you do any research at all, how important stacking is on a week-to-week basis when you're trying to identify upside. Now, you take a step back and you go, okay, so we know it is important in DFS. Nobody is going to argue against that. But is it important in regular fantasy football leagues? Is it important in dynasty leagues? And what you have to do is you have to look at the underlying fundamentals of the strategy and why you are doing it in the first place. And the reason you are doing it in the first place is we know the odds of you winning a DFS contest, the odds of you winning your fantasy football league, they are pretty damn low. A lot of people think that they can go in, they can just go, let's draft best player available, best player available, best player available. Let's not worry about a roster construction. They think that they can just identify players based on who they like and come away with an extremely high win rate in dynasty leagues. Well, no, that's not how it's done. While, of course, you have to be convicted with your own player analysis and you have to understand how to avoid those landmines, you really have to make sure that your roster construction is on point. That way you can go through, you can raise the ceiling for your fantasy team, because I hate to say this over and over and over again, but I swear to God, I feel like I'm a crazy person and the only person actually looking at the facts here. If you're playing in a 12-man dynasty league and only one person is going to win, your expected win rate for that league is about 8%. So everything we are doing, and I know we have said this a million times by now, so we're going to keep it brief, but everything we are doing is trying to expand and raise that 8% mark. I'm trying to get that 8% up to a 20%. And if you are winning your dynasty leagues at a 20% rate, you are going to be one of the best players in all of Dynasty Fantasy Football, and you're going to be extremely profitable. And I will say, we have been a profitable Dynasty Fantasy Football player across our entire portfolio every single season since 2014. So how we are doing that is understanding, hey, in this league, I don't really care if we get last place. If we get last place over here because we made some correlating bets, if we went and drafted Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper all in the same league, Dak Prescott goes down, oh, well, crap. Our season's done for. Well, let's go get the 101. Let's go tank. Next year, we'll be coming back at it. But hey, what happens last year if you draft Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs? Josh Allen hits to be the top quarterback in fantasy. All of a sudden, hey, you have also the top wide receiver in fantasy, and you are definitely the favorite to win your league. So understanding that making those correlated bets, yes, it's going to drastically shift you back and forth either to one end of the spectrum as a complete loser or the other end of the spectrum as a complete winner. But that's where you want to be in Dynasty. You do not want to be in the middle. You do not want to be just missing the playoffs by one game. You do not want to be earning the 106 in your rookie draft. You want to be either the champion or you want to be earning the rookie pick 101. This is why you punt or you go all in. So by building in those stacks into your starting lineup, you are getting that correlation where you are polarizing your roster and you're going to be on one end of the spectrum. So that's what we are getting ready to do this upcoming season. So let's go through and let's talk about some of these trade offers that we have sent. Now, of course, before we get into the video, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. Also, we have our Flock meetup this Saturday, June 19th, Austin, Texas, Zilker Park. Please, please, please come out if you can. Now, let's dive into it. Let's talk about our first trade here, where we sent out an offer where we are trading away Calvin Ridley for Stefon Diggs. Now, this is very simple here. We have Josh Allen. We go, okay, Calvin Ridley, yes, obviously gets a massive bump up when you have Julio Jones leaving this offense. A lot of people want to make the argument that Calvin Ridley is now the top wide receiver in fantasy for this upcoming season. Now, trust me, I have Calvin Ridley in so many leagues. I'm sure that all of y'all in Flock Patreon leagues, and by the way, all these trades came from Flock Patreon leagues. Y'all know how much we were invested into Calvin Ridley last offseason. I'm glad it paid off, but we're not going to be sticking in there, just holding on tight when we can make a move where we don't own Matt Ryan. We're not invested into the Atlanta Falcons offense. So if we can pivot over, get a Stefon Diggs when we have Josh Allen, get a wide receiver that has a similar floor and ceiling combination, get a wide receiver that is in a similar area of their career arc. You're not necessarily expecting Calvin Ridley to be around for an extra 5 years after Stefon Diggs hits his own decline. I mean, I know it's a boring trade offer, but it's a very simple one. And it's a very simple way to show you how you can go through and you can make trades to try to identify what stacks you want on your team and how you can complete those stacks. So here we have Josh Allen. I mean, does anybody have a solid argument for us not trading away Calvin Ridley for Stefon Diggs? Even if you rather have Calvin Ridley in Dynasty by a small amount, here, I think the roster construction really outweighs that, and that's what's so great about fantasy football. That's how you can get deals done, because sometimes you can move a player that maybe has a tiny bit more value to go get a different guy, and it actually helps your own team given your roster construction. Now, our next trade, I know a lot of people are going to hate this one. I have to give some context behind it. So this is a Flock Dynasty Best Ball League. And when you're playing in a best ball format, what really matters is having players that are going to be getting a significant amount of snaps, because you want to be making sure that throughout your entire roster, you're having players that have the potential to pop off for 25 points any given week. So if you're playing in a traditional league where you have to submit a starting lineup, this may not necessarily be a trade you want to make. But if you're playing in a best ball league, this is something that I'm completely fine doing. And here we offer Mark Andrews for Dallas Goedert and Michael Gallup. Now, the reason we do this is I love getting Michael Gallup on the cheap in a format like this, knowing that, hey, Michael Gallup, most likely someone you don't want to be starting on a week-to-week basis if you're having to predict when he's going to pop off. But in a best ball format where you can get his random 2 30-point spike weeks in your starting lineup, that's a player that does have a decent amount of value. And then also picking up Dallas Goedert here when you own Jalen Hurts. Also on this team, we actually have Devonta Smith as well. So we're pretty much monopolizing that Philadelphia Eagles offense. And when we own Jalen Hurts, when we own Devonta Smith, we're essentially making a bet that, hey, Jalen Hurts is going to come out. He's going to be the next Kyler Murray. He is going to be the next successful Oklahoma University quarterback that transitions in, has the rushing upside, can be a top quarterback in fantasy, and can support multiple options. Now, obviously, the odds of that happening are not extremely high, but you can safely say that, hey, if Jalen Hurts does turn into that next Kyler Murray this upcoming season, and you have Dallas Goedert, you have Devonta Smith on that roster, you are going to be getting that stack with that elite upside at such a cheap cost where it makes sense to go and make a move like that, where, hey, if Jalen Hurts, say he goes out there, gets injured, say he goes out there and he's disappointing in year 2, well, crap. It's not like Mark Andrews was guaranteed to be anything anyway, and we had an 11 out of 12 shot to lose this league regardless. Now, all that's going to happen is we're going to get a higher rookie draft pick. So I'm completely fine going and getting a Dallas Goedert, getting a Michael Gallup, knowing that this is a best ball format and we can capture those spike weeks from Gallup. All right, so now our next trade, very similar. This is a best ball format. Here we have Mike Evans, and we go through, offer Mike Evans for Robert Woods and Robby Anderson. So here, you guessed it, we own Matthew Stafford. And I know we are kind of just saying this to contradict ourselves with our last take that with Jalen Hurts, that's a great stacking option for that team given the roster construction. but I really want to talk about the difference between stacking a rushing quarterback and a pocket passing quarterback. So when we have a Matthew Stafford on your fantasy team, what are you betting here? When you have a Matthew Stafford rostered in fantasy, it's not the same case of a Jalen Hurts, a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, where you're rostering them, you're going, hey, even if they are not fantastic NFL quarterbacks, even if they are not going through and getting close to the top 5 in passing yards for the NFL, they can still be top overall options in fantasy given their rushing production. So there it's going to be a little bit less important to get a stack if you have a guy like a Lamar Jackson, if you have someone like Kyler Murray, if you have someone like Jalen Hurts. While you would like to have stacks there more times than not, it is not as crucial as it is when you're making a bet on a quarterback that is going to be getting his volume through passing yards. And that's what you're doing with Matthew Stafford here. You're making that bet when you're rostering, when you're drafting Matthew Stafford, that this is someone that has the potential in LA to be top 3 in the NFL in passing yards. And if you're making that bet, and if that hits, well, what other bets are most likely going to hit? And that is Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp returning value on where they are being drafted. So if we can go through and in a best ball format, we can trade Mike Evans for Robert Woods, a move that I view very lateral on this team. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. I probably shouldn't say this. This is a flock dynasty league, but I'm hoping the owner's not listening. If he would send me back a trade and says, Mason, I'll just give you Robert Woods for Mike Evans, let's just do the even swap, I would even do that, understanding roster construction. But getting Robbie Anderson on top of it is such a no-brainer trade if it does go through, given the fact that with Robbie Anderson, very similar to Michael Gallup. Yes, it may be difficult to expect exactly when that production is going to come, so it may be difficult to make that starting lineup decision. But with Robbie Anderson, you're looking at a guy that you don't have to do that with. If he does pop off, has 2 30-point spike weeks, all of a sudden, this is a player that you're going to be vaulting up into your starting lineup, given the fact that it's a best ball format. Most likely, he's going to be winning you the week. So here, I think that a trade like this is a no-brainer, but I really just wanted to highlight the importance of when you have those pocket passing quarterbacks, a Tom Brady, a Matthew Stafford, even a guy like a Jameis Winston, that it's very important to go out there and get their pass catching options, because if they are going to hit in fantasy, they're going to do it with passing volume, and their receivers on that same offense is going to come through with a ton of production. Okay, so now our next one, same league, same team. Here, we are offering Odell Beckham Jr. for Cooper Kupp. So y'all know I like Odell. Y'all know I would maybe even say that I have a fanboy crush on Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, we have the jersey behind us. He is literally the intro of the channel. But here we have Matthew Stafford. So even though we really do like Odell Beckham Jr., it makes sense to go get that correlation in the starting lineup. Obviously, Odell, we recently have covered that he does not have any guaranteed money on that contract in 2022. And you can easily see it within the range of outcomes for this team to go out there and cut Odell Beckham Jr. So I like this trade. I will say that I'm not going to be jumping up and down if it happens, because we are moving on from one of our guys. But this is the theme of the video here, moving a player in the same tier to go and get that correlation into your starting lineup, which is exactly what you're finding here with Odell Beckham Jr. and Cooper Kupp. Now, our next trade here, we offered Derrick Henry for Brandon Aiyuk and Rashad Bateman. Now, so I will say that this is going to be something that is completely dependent on your league settings. Now, yes, we owe Trey Lance. Trey Lance, not super important to stack, but if you're going to do it, you're probably wanting to do it with Brandon Aiyuk. But I want to focus in on the league settings for this particular Flock Patreon league. So I'm sure the majority of y'all know that we do different league settings for almost every single Flock league, but this is going to be similar to the last one we talked about. Here, this is a best ball league, but more importantly, the starting lineup requirements are 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 super flex, and then 6 additional flex spots. So what that makes me want to do for our roster construction is that makes me want to have 1 starting running back you feel confident about, then load up on as many wide receivers running routes as possible. Load up on as many guys that you know are going to be getting a significant amount of snaps in their wide receiver rooms. That way you can capture those 30-point weeks. This is how we crushed in the Flock Patreon leagues last year. I mean, the Flock Patreon leagues last year, we had an incredibly high win rate. I mean, I can obviously say this because the listeners of the channel witnessed it, but I know that Derrick Henry trading him away for Brandon Aiyuk and Rashad Bateman, a lot of people aren't going to agree with it. But given the format of the league, given the fact that we have Trey Lance, it's a no-brainer for me here. I mean, we have Travis Etienne. I'm comfortable rolling in with Travis Etienne as our running back 1 in this league. Derrick Henry, 27 years old, doesn't have that much guaranteed money left on his contract outside of 2021. So, yeah, I really like this trade. And our last one is we are offering in that same league Derrick Henry for Michael Thomas. So, yeah, I mean, we have Jameis Winston here. We already discussed the importance of stacking those quarterbacks that are going to be stationary guys, those guys that aren't picking up rushing production. And in the video that comes out today on the main fantasy football channel, I actually talk about my case on why I believe that Michael Thomas could be the wide receiver 1 overall for fantasy again in 2021. And yeah, I mean, this is a league where you only have to start 1 running back. You only have to start 1 wide receiver. The rest of the spots are flex spots. So that is going to make me want to construct our roster around wide receivers compared to running backs. So understanding your league settings, understanding how you can construct your roster with those league settings is going to make a massive impact on this trade for me, where I would prefer Michael Thomas over Derrick Henry. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I will try to keep y'all updated over there on Patreon if any of these trades get accepted. But of course, if you have an argument against any one of these, please feel free to go down to the comment section and let me know. And also, while you're down there, subscribe to the channel. We are growing at an incredible rate, and drop a like on the video. It helps us out a ton. And yeah, that's it. June 19th, Saturday, 6 p.m., Austin, Texas, Zilker Park, the official flock meetup. Please, if you can make it out, come out, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. Thank you to everybody supporting the show. We got some new members of the flock in Robert, Caden, Matt, Robby, Dan, John, Ziggy, Blake, Oliver, and Devin. Thank you, my dudes.